Hey there, Luke here from Flukes Kitesurfing, and in this video we'll go through riding a directional surfboard kiteboarding, and we'll give you some beginner tips. So this is for someone who's looking to get into some strapless riding or some directional kiteboard riding, and like I said, we'll go a bit of an overview on how it works and some tips that you can take with you. So first off, let's talk a little bit briefly about what a directional board is. So a directional board will always have a nose and a tail. It's designed to travel in one direction, and it'll have fins at the back. You can see I've actually taken the fins out of the board here for this demonstration, but you'll have fins at the back of the board, and like I said, it's all in the name. It goes sort of one direction, and you will be turning it around, which we'll be going through in a moment. You can see this board doesn't have any straps on it. You can have a directional board with or without straps. I find that no straps is actually easier for a directional board, which we'll go through some tips. But yeah, let's get into it and we'll go through how a directional board works. Okay, so let's talk about your foot positioning. So one of the things you might notice that's different about riding a twin tip to a strapless board or to a directional board is you actually have your feet in a slightly different position, and you also move your feet throughout your session. So if I put the board down, when you first get onto your directional board, you're going to want your legs a little bit wider than your shoulders. So you're not trying to spread your legs right out, and you're not trying to stand really close together. So you're sort of a little wider than your shoulders like this. When you're riding along the water surface, you can have your back foot sort of at the tail pad, but towards the front of it. And when you're doing turns, you can actually move your back foot right up against the back of the tail pad, and this is going to allow the board to get to turn through the water easier. But you'll notice in both situations, I'm towards the back of the board. So when you're talking about a directional board, you're always kind of towards the tail, and this is the reason that you have your tail pad at the back. That's where the fins are. The fins are underneath that, and you have sort of a front foot pad, which is sort of almost in the middle of the board. A couple of tips for riding is, like I just touched on, when you're trying to get up on plane to get on top of the water, or you're just riding through the water, it's more comfortable to move that back foot forward a little bit and get that weight a little more centered over the board. That's going to allow that rail to really dive in, and it's a more comfortable stance as well. But when you start to do a turn, or you're trying to ride a wave, or even if you're setting up for a jump, you actually move that foot right back into the back of the tail pad there. That's going to give you a lot of control through the turn and allow that board to really get up on the tail, use that tail rocker to actually turn through the water. So the second point is how you actually turn around is different, because on a twin tip, you go along on your heels, you sort of slow down, and then you go back the other way on the heels. Whereas with a directional, because you have to actually turn the board around, then there's two main ways that you can actually do that. One is a gybe. So when you're jibing, you'll be on the board, the wind's at my back right now, so I'll be going across the wind, heading this way, and then as you start to come in, as you start to want to turn around, you start to move the kite back over past 12, and at the same time, you move that back foot back into the tail, and let go of your backhand as you start to go around and bring it all the way around, and as you come around, you'll start to ride on your toe side, riding the other way. The other way to turn around is actually to be coming across again, wind's on my back, coming across the wind, you start to move the kite towards 12, and you steer the board up into the wind, and this is it for the tack. And as you start to steer up into the wind, then you actually switch your feet. You stay sort of facing downwind, but the board turns around, and then you're back on your heels and you ride back the other way. In either, it's mainly for the gybe, if you turn onto your toe side, now what you need to do is switch feet. You don't necessarily have to. With a directional board, you can ride heel side one side, gybe, toe side all the way back, gybe, heel side all the way back, and continue like that. But it gets pretty tiring on the back leg, and it's easier actually to switch your feet and get back onto your heels so that you can drive back upwind as well, because you may have already noticed when you're riding toe side, it's harder to get upwind. Most people really struggle with getting upwind on their toe side riding. So a good tip for that is to be coming along on your heel side, do a gybe, now you're riding on your toe side back the other way, and actually switch your feet so that you're on your heel side now, and you drive back upwind, and just before you're ready to turn around again, you actually switch your feet again, and then do a gybe and come all the way back. I think that the other way, if it's your very first time and you're thinking, well, it sounds too complex, and you can check our YouTube channel for other videos to explain those actual motions. But for the very first time, you can just go along, stop, kite to 12, jump off, get the board, turn it around in the water, and then actually head back the other way. So you can do that over and over again while you're getting comfortable with it. Then you can start some jibes. I'd say that the jibing is easier than the tack. So you can start to jibe and try and start to switch your feet. And then as you get more and more comfortable, you can actually start the tack. Okay, so next let's talk about the water start. The water start is similar to how you'd water start with a twin tip for the kite motion, but of course you don't have straps if you're riding strapless. Now, I did want to just mention that you can of course ride with straps on your directional board or strapless on your directional board, and I have to recommend that you actually go strapless. The straps I find really uncomfortable. I really think that they don't work well with a directional board because of that weight. They lock your feet in position and not necessarily the position that you always want. Because one of the nice things about riding strapless is you are constantly moving your feet and getting into that comfortable riding stance to tack upwind or to do turns, and that makes for a more comfortable session. As soon as you put straps on, you're kind of locked into that position. You're doing a lot more toeside riding, and I find it really uncomfortable. So if you're wondering which one to go with, definitely go with strapless, take those straps off. And then for the water start, what you're doing, very similar to the normal water start, however this time just put your feet up on top of the board so they're sort of resting on top, steer the kite as you normally would, a little bit behind 12, dive it in the direction you want to go, and then think about sort of activating that core a little more and rolling up onto the top to stand on top of the board for the first few attempts so that you really feel like, okay, I'm up on top of the board. Then you can power stroke down and continue riding. But one of the nice things about the directional board, particularly when it's a little bit bigger like a surfboard style, is that you have that extra buoyancy. You can actually stand on it a little more than a twin tip. It will carry your weight a little more, and that makes it easier to plane, easier to even tack upwind, and in a lot of ways it can even be easier if you are a complete beginner and you're looking to get into the sport and you've only had a few lessons so far. You can actually go immediately to a directional strapless board. We've had some people that really have done that from the very start. They never really did twin tips, and it was successful for them because really once you're standing on it, the weight of you is on the board, so it's not actually flying away from you as much as people think. So it's a good way to even begin kite surfing if you're a beginner and you're thinking, okay, should I try strapless or strap directional twin tip? You can actually go straight to a strapless directional board, and that can work for you. A couple more final tips. One is that if you are riding strapless again, what you need to pay attention to is that if you're seeing oncoming waves or oncoming chops, is to actually slow down, because what can happen is if you're used to riding a twin tip, you can float a little bit above those waves and continue riding. With the strapless board, you're going to get pulled off your board. So when you're coming up to a chop or a wave, slow down, bring the kite up so it's a bit higher than than riding. Use your legs to absorb the swell so you can keep your feet connected to the board connected to the water. That's another tip that I think can really help people just stay on the board. And yeah, look, I think that is all. I think that's everything for this video. So hopefully there's some helpful takeaways. Go out there, let us know how it works for you in the description. Let us know if you have any other questions. But hopefully you have a great time, and we'll see you out in the water.